Hi guys, and welcome to A Dog's Soul, an empath's guide to your dog's feelings. Today, we're going to talk about the empath's way to train a dog. Enjoy! Alright, so the classical dog training is something a lot of people expect when I come to their homes. And the classical way is something like the dog has to obey. And even the nicer ones, the nicer trainers, so the ones not using e-collars or prong collars right away, start with obedience and plant the expectation or nurture the expectation of the dog owners that the dog has to comply and behave and obey in every situation all day long whenever they want. The humans, not the dogs. And what is completely lost in that way of doing dog training is the dog's well-being. Because when a dog causes any kind of problems, and we talked about this on YouTube on Thursday. We will talk about this. So go check that channel out. It's Brave Dog Training online. And we will go into detail about why dogs cause problems. But in short, it's because they feel uncomfortable, either in a situation or in day-to-day life. And what the empath's way of dog training does is we look at a holistic picture. We look at every aspect of the dog's life and see where the dog needs some support, where we can do things better. So, for example, if we have a very nose-oriented dog and the only activities he gets to do is chasing after a ball and bringing it back and chasing after the ball and bringing it back and forth and back and forth. And there is not much sniffing involved, and there are no search games, there is no scent work, and on walks the nose is constantly on the ground and he's not listening. And well, this can have multiple reasons. One of them can be that the need of sniffing and the need to use the nose is just not fulfilled in everyday life, and so the dog compensates on walks. And that can be really annoying. If you have a dog who is just not listening at all, it can be annoying. And it can also be less obvious. So, for example, if you have the same dog and that dog is also a little bit insecure when meeting other dogs, that need not being met can lead to lunging, barking, growling on leash when he sees another dog. It will probably not be the only cause of that behavior. There has to be something there beforehand. But whenever we don't feel centered and grounded and happy, we tend to get cranky. And it's the same thing for our dogs. So when we see our dogs acting out and not listening or going crazy whenever there is another dog or a person or they are home alone, it's because there is something that's bothering the dog. And the empath's way of training is to find out what it is for the dog and then make the dog's life better one day at a time. And we will not be able to fulfill every need, of course, because, for example, we cannot fulfill the need to procreate. We cannot fulfill the need to chase live animals. We can substitute for that as best as we can, but if we have a hunting breed, we will never be able to fulfill that completely. But we have to do our best to at least substitute it, right? And if we have a dog with a need for close contact, for example, a very strong need for that. And we always try not to react when the dog asks for cuddles or for attention, because we have to be the pack leader and we have to decide when it's time for those things. Then the dog will be unhappy, let alone that this whole pack leader thing is BS, and all that does is put strain on the relationship and it does nothing good. But it is an example that happens really often. And also the thing with the sniffing. Dogs are very nose-oriented animals, and if we structure our works in a way that the dog cannot sniff enough, and that depends on the dog. Some dogs need more, some dogs need less. But if we always cut them short, and if we always have a short leash on, and if we are always worried, for example, that our dog will pee on something and that's why he doesn't get to sniff, or we are afraid that he will eat something that is not good for him and that's why he's not allowed to sniff, it will put the dog in a situation where his needs are not fulfilled and where at some point it will show. And to be honest, we as humans put our dogs in the situations they're in, be it day-to-day life or be it special situations like meeting other dogs on leash or staying home alone. We put them there. It's not their choice, it's ours. And so it's our duty to make their lives as happy as possible and make the situations dealable for them. Make the situations comfortable. Like if we have a dog who is lunging, barking, growling on leash, it's because he is uncomfortable. And there is either fear or frustration behind it, or both. Most of the time, when it's frustration, it's also some kind of fear, or it's fear alone. And that's uncomfortable. Our dogs are not acting out to be the leader or something. And yes, some dogs protect their humans, and this is nothing else than resource guarding. And behind every resource guarding situation is a dog that is uncomfortable. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel the need to protect the resource. Because first, he has to be afraid to lose the resource to feel the need to guard it. And what the Empath's way of dog training does is find out what it is. Find out what the dog needs. Find out how the dog can live a happy and joyful and fulfilled life by our side so he doesn't need to act out or misbehave. And this is, of course, also a very sustainable way of going at things, because if the dog is fulfilled and happy, why should he act out again? It's not necessary. And if we are just dealing with simple, single situation problems like leash reactivity, and very often leash reactivity is not the underlying issue, there is something else. But sometimes it really is just leash reactivity. And then our dogs need a strategy. They need a way to feel good in the situation. And that's also why with the Empath's way of dog training, there is no corrections. We cannot feel comfortable with uncomfortable corrections. And they are at least uncomfortable, otherwise they wouldn't work. Very often they are even painful. And how can we feel comfortable with pain? It's not possible. And it's not possible for our dogs as well. They can suppress themselves because they're afraid of what's going to happen. But suppressing oneself is not making the situation any better. It's making it worse. And our dogs will feel even more uncomfortable, and our dogs will, at some point, have to explode because they cannot contain themselves any longer. And they feel so bad that something's gonna happen. And I, for myself, don't want to wait for that moment where it can come back or get worse or even produce health issues. Because if a living being holds back constantly, it's going to make some problems eventually, and we will see health issues as well. And that's not something that we want. It's not why we adopted our dogs in the first place. So if we want to really connect with our dogs, to really have an awesome relationship, to have fun together, and to enjoy our time together, considering how short it is, we have to consider the dog's well-being, and we have to put the dog's well-being first when we think about training. And that's what the Empath's way of dog training does. So if this is how you want to deal with issues like fear or reactivity or resource guarding, go to the description, book a free call. We see how this can look like exactly for you and your dog and the situations he's uncomfortable in or you're uncomfortable in. Because sometimes we are uncomfortable in those situations as well because we don't feel safe. For example, if we have a dog resource guarding the food bowl and we are never sure if there is going to be an incident or how close we can get before there is something happening or how we can put it down and pick it back up without getting hurt. This is not something comfortable to live with. So maybe you've heard the saying happy wife, happy life, and it's the same thing with our dogs. If our dogs are happy and fulfilled and confident and joyful, we have a very easy life with them. If we're constantly fighting with them, it's constantly a struggle and it's never feeling good for us as well. And that's why I've created this, and that's why I'm working with the methods I do, because if our dog's well-being is our number one priority, there is really not much to think about. There is really no question about what methods or what tools we're going to use. So if you're listening on YouTube, tell me in the comments, or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, tell me via PM or via email what your biggest issue with your dog is right now and what you have tried already. I would love to read those. And I wish you an amazing time training your dog, because this way is not only sustainable, it's also the most fun we can have training. Alright? So enjoy the process, enjoy your dog, and we'll see each other next time. Bye!